To anyone who's got a passion for something, don't think about being contained by what people tell you you can and can't do. Your biggest risk is not leaving your job. Your biggest risk is staying in your job. Power, when you're in organizations, in a pyramidal hot pot, is a very, very dangerous thing if it's not done with integrity. Because then you have bullying and the greed, and it all comes down to money and fear for your future. The thing about greed is it doesn't stop. The more you have, the more you want. The rich get richer, the poor get poor. So the financial apartheid is huge, and it's growing and exploding, and it's getting fundamentally worse. As you see, any war you care to name, I genuinely believe that most of those human beings are good human beings. It's just the extremes at the top who are very, very invested, and this could be what's happening in Israel, Palestine, it could be what's happening in Russia, Ukraine. Most of the people, the 99.9, will be living happy and in harmony. It's the 1% who've got this vested interest in control, guns, armory, costs, big amounts of money being made. They're not real wars, they're economic wars, generated and created by very few, utilizing the masses. In my firm, we look after food banks. Just think about it, one of the wealthiest cities in the world, and we have to have food banks.
Welcome back to the show, guys. Just a quick one. The purpose of this podcast is to share the stories of the awesome guests that we have on, in the hopes that their story is exactly what you needed to hear on your journey to give you the encouragement and maybe even the inspiration that you were looking for to make a positive change in your life. And remember, the best way to make any changes that last is to first make sure that your environment supports the future you. You want this for both your physical as well as your digital environments, because what you continuously consume, you end up becoming. So make sure that you're subscribed to this channel so that you're making it easy to get access to an environment that supports your future growth. Enjoy the episode and stay visionary.
In today's episode, I'm sitting down with founder of Aria Grace Law, which recently won Law Company of the Year. He's not only changing the way law firms are run, but is also involved with the Key for Life charity to help reduce reoffending youth, antisocial behaviour and knife crime. With all of this going on, I got to know him through a Simon Squibb event where he was called on the spot to confirm that he was donating £1,000 for a hoodie for a young entrepreneur to start his journey in business. Lindsay Healey, thank you so much for joining me on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So let's start this conversation with your background and your journey, because as I mentioned, you are the founder of a law firm.
Yeah.
What brought you into the career of law in the first place? Why was that the pursuit?
I think if you ask that question of any lawyer, they're always going to say to you, I want to bring around justice. I want to go and bring around, my values. I want to help people. I want to give access to the wider benefits of societal impact and growth, etc. And then you see, roll on 30 years later, you see the greed, the corporate structures and the big city environments, and you think, how do those two things marry up? And actually, that's in many ways a big public perception, because there are so many lawyers who continue on with that vibe, who sort of say, well, actually, I want to go and do good, and I want to go and bring value to people, and I want to go and give knowledge and access, and I want to do working with immigration. I want to go and work with people in social justice and pro bono work, and etc. But the perception from the Joso public is very different. It's all the joke being 99% of the lawyers make the 1% look bad. It's that sort of thing. So I like many people really wanted to make a change and use our skill set. My skill set that I had was always very good at negotiations, always very good at debating, always very interested in doing deals and corporate work, etc. So I thought this is the only job for me.
Where does this want of creating that difference for you specifically come from?
I think we all have it. You see, I think the thing about being human is that we have to look after humans. I really think that's innate in pretty much all of us. And I think when you start thinking about, when I was born in 1969, and 89. Okay, 69. I was born in 69.
I didn't say 89 from this point on.
I'm only 23. Look at it. I was born in 69, and there were 3.5 billion people on the planet around about the time. Now we're closing up to 8.5, 9. And I was always of the view that if everybody does something small and incremental every day, that's positive and that's good, then the world would be a fundamentally different place than it is today. And people don't, because they see the negative side of things. They see, people getting away with stuff. They see people cheating. They see whatever else, and they think, what's the point? Why should I bother? And they lose sight and track of the fact that you can actually do so many good things. You can do so many valuable things collaboratively. And they see the collaborators as the people who are getting away with stuff, but actually the collaborators are all of us.
Okay, there's so many things there. Let's start with this idea that collaboration is the way forward. Okay?
Yeah.
Where we live in a world where there's fierce competition for pretty much anything and everything, especially in the world of business, but then even outside of business, you've got, think of something trivial. Even if you're looking at like people who want to change their living circumstances, etc., there's always this sense of competition over collaboration. Where have you seen collaboration really help you in your journey to achieve some of the goals that you've managed to achieve?
Well, think about everything you do in your day-to-day life, your family life. You've got to collaborate with your wife, your husband, your parents, your kids. You've got to work together. You've got to compromise. You've got to go and do things that you might think is, I don't want to do this now, but this will help, and then I'll get time to go and do what I need to go and do. You think about it in pretty much any sport. Your under 10s football, they're all chasing after the same ball, and they fail to work in teamwork. Then you go up to the other end of the scale and you see how people collaborate at Premier League football, and if you're working together as a team, how much more efficient you are, how much better you are, on every single sort of measurable scale, rather than people doing things for themselves on an individual basis. So you can see pretty much in anything that you do that how collaboration can work for a wider impact rather than just one. So it's always the same where you have people in business, so never have the sort of the alpha person there who is a wrecking ball, and she or he might be absolutely brilliant at what they do, but if they wreck the environment around them, they're just not worth having. So you can take that sort of thing and you can extrapolate it into pretty much anything, where you say, well, actually, if you work together, I mean, as a law firm, for example, I work with an awful lot of other startups, law firms. I'm always giving advice. This is what we're doing and how we're growing and how we're sharing and how we're collaborating and that, because they're not the competition. If we work with a huge bunch of SMEs and companies across the UK, there are fundamentally way too many of them for us to deal with. So we're not in competition for clients. There are so many clients all over the place that need help, but we are in competition for getting clients really good advice, really good legal advice, really good legal opinions, commercial opinions, how to give great value so that people aren't being ripped off everywhere. That the prices can't keep going up, even in law, in groceries and whatever else, because that just has huge knock-on effects to day-to-day living. So when you're working with other law firms, you're saying, well, let's give each other a nudge. If you're doing the right thing, let's help. If you're doing the wrong thing, let's call it out. And let's be brave. Let's face up to what it is. Let's not pretend that these things don't exist anymore. Let's just really try and be honest and try and have integrity that says that's not right, that is right, and help or call it out.
It takes a lot of courage to be able to speak up in that way, to be able to call something out. Is there a practical way that people can start to develop that skill when they see something that isn't done potentially in the best way possible? I want to avoid using the word the right way because that's very subjective.
Yeah, of course.
But is there a way that people can practically develop that skill to build that courage to be able to feel comfortable in calling out something that they feel doesn't sit right and use that as an opportunity to help someone better themselves?
I think it comes from within. I think you've got to have hope at whatever age you're at. I think it's easier being older and being established and having, less things to be fearful of. And I think fear drives all the wrong behaviors. So like my kids will tell me when I've done something that they don't think is right. If I've used, old fashioned language, which they would think, nah, you don't use that anymore. That's just so old. This is what you use. This is how you speak. This is how you behave. And this is the modern way or whatever. And they'll call it out. They'll address it. They might not address the same things in the same way as with such bravery at school because they have a little bit more fear and they have like, oh, I don't want to be bullied if I call somebody out and I'm a little bit scared of this or whatever. Same thing in the work environment. As a very junior, within an organization, if you start calling things out, whistleblowings are great examples where people lose their jobs, they lose their perspectives in particular companies by calling out the right answer. So the wrong messages are being driven into people saying, actually, if you call something out in a material way, you will be punished. As opposed to, and that's very bad corporate governance. That leads to things like what happened in the post office, what happens in governments where there's a whole level of corruption and things because people don't call it out. So you have to be brave. You have to have integrity and values to say, do you know what? I don't work in a place like this where they have these sorts of behaviors. I'd rather work somewhere else. But of course, in any pyramidical structure, you have the people at the top telling the people at the bottom, you're very lucky to have this job. And if you leave here, then you're going to be desolate. You're not going to have any future earnings. You're not going to have any future existence, which is absolutely untrue. It's just another form of bullying, obviously. But that's what happens. Corporate governance allows these things to happen and allows them to flourish. Why? Because the examples at the very top of the organizations, which are not things to be, in most cases, or many cases, they're not things to be followed. You don't want to be following the government's standards. You don't want to be following the post office standards. You don't want to be following any of those sorts of things because it all leads to corruption. It all leads to greed, control, power in that pyramidical structure. The pyramidical structure in any society has got a huge amount to answer for because of the level of powers. In typical law firms, it's the white men at the top with the occasional people of color with the occasional women for checklist tick boxes or whatever they have. But it's the people that are below that who are aspiring to move up. And as they get further and further up the hopper, they get pushed out and the chosen few stay because they're part of a network or they're part of something. And then there's the control, the fear, the person trying to move up and the people who are gatekeepers above them. They know that they've got the power over you. And power, when you're in organizations, in a pyramidical hot pot, is a very, very dangerous thing if it's not done with integrity. Because then you have those bullying and the control and the greed, and it all comes down to money and fear for your future. If I allow this person up, then I've got competition, and the structure of the organization will then potentially have me kicked out if I allow this person up, and that's a very poor business model.
I feel like I could listen to you just talk all day long. So the This brings
That's
me...
another thing I don't get from my children.
So there's something that you said there which links back to what we were talking about before we started recording, which is this whole idea of David versus Goliath, because it feels like in those structures, like the pyramid structure you're describing, the power sits at the top. And that is a David versus Goliath type story that most people will have in their minds. What is your take on that? And how can people, or not just people in general, but how could one person recognize their own power to be able to start changing their reality, if not trying to change an entire system?
Small question. So I think when you walk down any high street, you see many charity shops, for example. Mm-hmm. And some of them do okay, some of them go bust, some of them, somewhere in the middle. And you often think to yourself, well, I do. I look at them and I go, why don't they collaborate with each other? Why don't they form one big super charity shop? And then, a bit like you go into Waitrose or somewhere like that, or supermarkets, and you get these green little coins, and you say, right, put it into whatever charity pot you want outside. Thanks very much. You spent 100 quid. Here's your couple of green coins. Put them in the charity pot, and we, the organisation, will donate to those particular things. So you might think, well, okay, Age UK is going to get some stuff, and Spinal Research is going to get some stuff, and that's great. When you look at those charity shops, many of the reasons that they don't come together is because of ego and control. And so the people at the top don't want to divest themselves of their position within this particular charity. But then if you imagine, if you looked at it a completely different way and said, you're all really good people, but you're spending so much money on back office processes, you're spending so much money on charity technology, you're spending so much money on overheads and operational costs and property, and you're not getting bulk buying capabilities. And if you actually came together, you could have one CEO, so that just will get rid of a whole bunch of CEO wasted cost salaries. You could have one back office system, you could have one COO, and then you could have gazillions of people working in their particular sections that they want to go and do. And they don't do this because of, as you call it, David and Goliath. It's the pyramidical structures of the people at the top controlling everyone at the bottom. And it's everyone at the bottom working for the people at the top is the issue. And it's the way I would look at it is slightly inverse. I would look at it as David and Goliath. Goliath are the people. David's are the small people. They're the people at the top who are in fear of being found out, or in fear of competition, or in fear of losing control. And if you really, really wanted to, and I genuinely believe that 99.9% of all human beings are intrinsically really good people, and they don't have they work in silos. They're like the charity shops in the high street. They don't have a bond with other people who are good souls, who have good morals, who have good ethics and values. And if they did, then you would find that 99% of people would be at the top of the tree, with the very few people at the bottom of the tree. And in many ways, this is true for many things. You see, any war you care to name, it's current ones and that we all know. I genuinely believe that most of those human beings are good human beings. It's just the extremes at the top who are very, very invested. And this could be what's happening in Israel and Palestine. It could be what's happening in Russia, Ukraine. It could be happening, anything that's going on in China, any of these, Tibet, all these sorts of wars. You could take a look at any of those things, and most of the people, the 99.9, would be living happy and in harmony. They genuinely would. It's the 1% who've got this vested interest in control, guns, armory, costs, big amounts of money being made, send more munitions into wherever, then the gun manufacturers and the munition manufacturers make a ton of money that feeds other people, etc., etc. They're not real wars. They're economic wars, generated and created by very few, utilizing the masses to go and create those continuums.
So what then is the practical first step that the small person that thinks they're David, but in actual fact is Goliath, what could that person practically do, just as small steps to even start recognizing the power that they do have to make a change?
Well, talk, communicate, I think, and talk to the right minded people. Something really interesting happened last Friday, I think. Some guy wrote, those gov polls you can write, I want to go and, I want Parliament to debate whatever, no wind farms or whatever, something like that. Anyway, this guy wrote, I feel as though I've been misled by the Labour Party in their manifesto. They've lied, and now I want another general election, please. And so he chucked this out on Friday. By Saturday, it had over 1 million signatures. And by Sunday, it had 2.5 million signatures.
Whoa.
That's Goliath.
I completely agree, and I think this is where maybe we as people have been conditioned by fear, which you've named a couple of times now, so much that this idea of speaking out is more fearful than we fear that more than the idea of actually creating the result that we want. And this is a perfect example. I mean, to get 2 million people,
2.5, I think.
2.5 million
probably
people.
3 at the moment.
Jeez.
Yeah.
2.5 to 3 million people taking action because one person had the courage to speak out about something. And I think this is where it really is very important to recognize you don't have to do this aggressively. You don't have to come out screaming and shouting about something you don't
It's
like.
better not to.
Absolutely.
It's more congruent. People will go, do you know what? That resonates with me. You know, in actual fact, if you think about it even more, it's a lot of people don't speak out because they think there's a risk of speaking out and something bad's going to happen, etc. The risk is not speaking out.
Because then nothing changes.
Nothing changes.
Which leads me on perfectly to what it is you're changing in your industry, in the industry of law.
Yeah.
So Aria Grace is a complete change to a archaic system when it comes to law. What is Aria Grace's philosophy, and how is it differentiating itself from traditional law firms?
So, and perhaps not even just traditional law firms. Every organization wants to make a profit. It's driven by the founder or the senior equity or the people at the top, so they can derive as much income as possible from the workers. And you very often hear the expression, our employees are our best assets. And as a corporate lawyer, I can tell you, an asset is there to be sweated and monetized and exploited. So anytime you hear somebody telling you that you're an asset, you better believe them, because they just want to use you as an asset to derive profit. They don't really care what that asset is, and they will give a little bit of cocooning and, you know, protectionisms around it. Not a lot. You know, the difference between an employee and a consultant in any real terms is very, very little. You know, people get fired the whole time. Redundancy rounds in mass whips, and you remember the P&O redundancy rounds. You know, these things happen where people are told, back to the Matrix, blue pill, red pill, you know, people are told what they want to hear or what they think they want to hear. And actually the reality of what's behind it is a completely different thing. I'm an employee, I'm protected, I'm looked after, I'm an asset of the organization. Assets have natural expiry points, and the minute you become expensive or not adding value to the you know, overall profit lines, then you're expendable, you're gone. The corollary of that, of course, is the minute you try to move on from somewhere else, they say, where's your loyalty? Why are you moving away from us? We've treated you so well. They're not. So it's not about law firms per se. It's about the way that people are treated, and it's about before I want to put a flag down. I want to say I'm a capitalist. I love making money for me because that improves the value for my family. I love making money for other people too, because I think that's a really strong way of collaborating. And I believe the more you collaborate, the more you share, the more you do things together, the more fun you have, the better way you can earn more for everyone. I don't like the idea of billionaires. I think they're a complete and utter waste of time. I think everyone should aspire to be able to earn 2 million, 3 million, you know, whatever, just enough to keep you going, enough to keep you very, very happy in life, to look after your kids, to look after your bills, to look after your future. And the whole thing of greed, I think, is about fear, because people think I've got a 10-year window of opportunity to go and make as much money as possible. Then I'm going to, retire early. Then I'm going to live my life and so forth. And the thing about greed is it doesn't stop. The more you have, the more you want. And it just becomes a condition. The difference between a millionaire and a billionaire is really interesting when you put it in terms of time. A million seconds is... Do you want to have a guess how many million seconds equates to?
In years?
No, how long is a million seconds, would you guess? It's 11 and a half days, give or take.
Oh, is that it?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
A billion, have a guess.
11 and a half days. I'm going to say 5 months.
A billion seconds is 32 and a half years.
Jeez.
So when you're looking at the difference between a millionaire, 11 and a half days, versus a billionaire, 32 and a half years, you can see that the chasm, and the people who are millionaires thinking that they've got something in common with billionaires, they don't. They've got more in common with the bottom, 8.5 billion people on the planet than they do at the top 0.0001% of people.
That is a staggering difference.
It's phenomenal. Now, in my view, I think people should be able to have, let's go for a whole month's worth of seconds of wealth. Let's just say you've got 5 million or 4 million, whatever it is. That's going to be more than you're ever going to need in your lifetime, right? You can buy a really nice house, you can pay your taxes, you can have a continuum of stuff and so forth. Pretty much anyone could live on that. It's not hard. I think Jackie Ma had once said that the ultimate number was to 10 million, a year, I think he was. But he's coming from a very different perspective. I think from most people, we could very, very live comfortably with £1 million a year, whatever. You don't need 32 and a half. And you look at people like, Mr. Musk and all the others, they've got 300-400 of those, lots and lots, whatever. You don't need them. It's irrelevant. And actually, after a while, money becomes not about money, it's an asset. It's just there to be stockpiled and built up. What can I do? I can buy more. But actually, if I'm just going to keep it for myself, and that just has an inflationary impact. And unless we're going to do vast amounts of quantitative easing, putting lots and lots of money into society to pull that back up again, then you've got people stockpiling money, depriving other people of the money. And so the rich get richer, the poor get poorer. The rich invest in more things like crypto and whatever else, and IoT and artificial intelligence. Next thing is quantum coming down the line, and so on. Whereas your mere mortal who doesn't have that is standing still and becomes obviously poorer by perspective. As the rich get richer and richer and richer, the poor get poorer by virtue of standing still, or perhaps going a little bit backwards. So the financial apartheid is huge, and it's growing and exploding, and it's getting fundamentally worse for people, and you can see it as inflation comes around. If you take a look at what's happened in the States over the last sort of 10 years, where you've got people in California and people in New York, some of the greatest cities of the world, who are now having to live on food stamps. It's extraordinary. In my firm, we look after food banks. Food banks. This city. It's extraordinary. We have food banks. We have to have food banks.
In London.
Just think about it. One of the wealthiest cities in the world, and we have to have food banks. It's extraordinary.
There is so much to go into there, and I love the way that your mind... I just love the way that your mind works and sees all these things. Where do you draw the line? And how can someone listening to this draw the line on what is enough for them?
Well, if it comes down to money, you're starting from the wrong perspective. Because I think as you get older in life, you kind of realize the two most important things are time and health. And money is just a means to be utilized to pay for day-to-day existence. And years ago, somebody told me a fantastic story. They were going off to one of the Blasket Islands off the west of Ireland or something like that, and on the west coast. And they were with this lovely couple on the boat, and they lived in a cottage on the Blasket Island, one of them. And they were just the happiest people they've ever met. No money, no nothing. They just loved each other. They had health. They had the most beautiful environment around them. They didn't have any need for cash. Didn't, they had enough food. They had their kids. They had their family. They had their social life. They had everything around them. They had a simplicity of being which was richer than perhaps anything that any of us have.
Interesting. It's I guess it's more around being able to take stock of what means something to you, and then working towards creating that, and recognizing that money is no more than a tool.
Money, exactly. The minute you get away from I have to have it to it's a necessity for certain amounts of my life, then yeah, I mean you can't just ignore it. It's really important, but it's not the thing that is the be all and end all. It's not the focus. And to have enough is enough. That's the thing, is you don't need to go past the phases of saying, well, I need to have another 10 million pounds of shares and whatever. I don't need to buy crypto. I don't need to go and for what purpose? What's it there for? If you can come into the world and leave the world with nothing, then so what? We're only here for a very, very short space of time. We then get to be a sandwich generation, which you're heading into, and I'm definitely in. Looking after my children, I'm looking after my parents, and I'm running the everything in between. And life is a conveyor belt. You're born, you convey, you die, and you live the best you can in between. There's no point in having, I don't know what Mr. Musk and everyone else are going to go and do with their gazillions, but they're creating and doing things fine, but they're giving back, which is great. I had a lovely message from John Colwell, who's the boss at Phones for You, and he's giving away 70% of his entire pot. That's incredible. I wrote to him and I told him about my firm. He was like, "That's amazing what you guys are doing." He's just big capitals, amazing what you guys are doing. So you've got people at the very top end of the scale, people at the other end of the scale who are all happy and they're all doing things with good things with money, and they're then creating a better world for the next generations. If we can leave the world in a better place than we found it, and we're not doing a great job at the moment, that's got to take your soul somewhere. You've got to have that thing in here that says I want to go and do it. And that's what I did with our firm. I think going long-winded way of describing what we did with Aria Grace. My background was a corporate lawyer at one of the very, very big law firms in the city, and I got a great insight to the way that big corporates work, and the way that they're structured, and the mindset, and the way that they think, and the way that they operate, and it's brilliant in many ways. It's regimental. It's like a brilliantly functioning army. But I could see straight away in that pyramidical structure. This is in 1997, 98. You could see in that structure how it was that feudal system that I described. The overlords, and then the peasants working for the overlords. And I stayed there for several years, and then I became a lawyer in a FTSE 250 as one of the general counsels in there, running a sector, and I got to see life on the other side, and as an employee in there, and you get to see how business runs and how everything works and operates. And I stayed there for about 13 years, and it wasn't until about 2015 that I left, and I went into consultancy for myself. So I was older, had lots of experience, I had lots of capital cash build up from the previous years. So I had a bit of a platform, and I think platforms are very important, because when you have a platform, you got to go and do stuff with it, in my view. I became a consultant, and actually I oddly found out about that was the first blue pill, red pill matrix moment of scales falling away, how much you can earn for yourself when you're not paying your overlord, you're not paying your master, you're not paying somebody else for the skills that you have. And you're thinking, crumbs. And then you start thinking about the team play that I described earlier, about the collaboration and that. And you think, well, actually, it's not very collaborative, where you're working as hard as you are and your boss is working as hard as they are, and they're taking 6, 7, 10x more than you. There was a great podcast a couple of years ago on PwC where the head of PwC, one of the senior execs who had a salary of 32 million a year, was asked why somebody at the bottom of the chain had to, was unable to afford life, because she had mortgages and this, that, and the other pay, and she ended up in negative equity. And same organization, people are doing the same cogs within the same machine, helping make the money for the organization, and he was on 32 million and she was on minus 500 a month or whatever.
Jeez.
And so one of the reasons I started Aria Grace Law CIC was that I saw how much money you could make for yourself by not having an overlord structure, an employer-employee structure, a master-servant structure, a exploited-exploitee structure. And I thought, this is brilliant. This is great. Everything's control. I was working in the bank in Canary Wharf, and then I stayed there for a year and a bit, and I said, gosh, this is such really good money, really good flexibility, really sort of nice way of working. Wish I'd done this earlier. Then I worked in Capita as heading up their SIBS division, and similar sort of thing. But I was doing this on my own as a consultant and doing very well. And then the pennies started to dawn on me when I was talking to friends of mine in law. At that time, equal pay was becoming a conversation. And some very brave people, men and women, were talking about equal pay. But the women were being paid much less than men for the same job in law, lawyers. So the conversation was, what are people doing about this? It's just not fair, right? Why should I get paid more than you, or why should you get paid more than me when you're doing the same thing, right? Favoritism, whatever. And so there were lobbying all over the place. They were lobbying government. They were lobbying big, city law firms, etc. And nobody would do anything much about it. They paid lip service to it, and they'd say, "Great, blah blah blah." But having big city law firms voting for equal pay is kind of like turkeys voting for Christmas. It's just illogical. Why do I want to give away my wealth to you? Why would I do that? I'm in the trough. Why would I give it to you? I'm in the favorite seat. Why would I balance things out? And so the actual realization was on me then is it can't happen, because the pyramidal structure will always have people who are just about to get into the top equity phase, and they've gone through 10 years, 15 years of hardships. They've come from the bottom. They've worked like Trojans and whatever else is. They get to just about to get into trough time. And then suddenly you're going to say, no, it's the same for everyone. You said, forget that. If you did that, then they would go and leave your firm and they'd go and work for a competitor firm. Everyone would leave, would just drive out. So the behaviors were there. And I was looking at the law firm structures and I was thinking, gosh, what do they actually do? When you really, really just stop and analyze what happens in law firms or accountancy practices or banks or wherever, and you just take a look at how the pay structure works. Lawyers get approximately a third of the fee. So you bill 100, they get approximately £33 for every 100 that's billed. It's actually not true. They probably get about £20, but for the math's sake, we'll say that. The middle third is used to pay for the very expensive buildings and the typing pools and the holidays and the mings and the Titians on the wall and the whatever else is the extraordinary foyers. Some of the foyers you can go to in some of the firms, you start at the door and it'll take you, a good 2 minutes to get to reception.
Wow.
They're huge. They're vast. They're wasteful. And then the top third will go to the senior equity for no good reason other than they've arrived there. They've gone through the Game of Thrones. They've killed off all the competitors and they've arrived at the top.
So before you continue, just to challenge your thinking, or just to get an insight into your thinking on this, could the argument then not be made that they're the ones that took the risk to start the company in the first place, and therefore by default they are then owed that level of equity? What's your view on that?
Hey guys, just a quick one. This video is sponsored by Podify, our podcast-based marketing and content creation agency that really helps our clients to create content that builds awareness, showcases authority, and keeps it authentic. This is so important because Google's research shows that for prospects to become clients, they need to consume at least 7 hours of content across 11 different touch points on at least 4 different platforms. So with more personal branding style content out there, the last thing that your prospects want to see on your socials are those posts that say, buy my stuff. So if you're a business owner or you know someone that could use our expertise and service in creating the right type of content, then get in touch using the link below in the description and we'll give you a free consultation to see if and how we can help you. Thanks so much. And for now, let's get back to the episode.
If you're Bill Gates or Elon Musk and you've created something from new and it's novel and innovative and it's come from your head and no one else has ever done it before and it's brilliant, and you're employing people all over the place to help you to do it and to build it and to create it and lift it, and they're excited because they wouldn't have ever come across what Bill Gates did or what Elon Musk has done, you would say, that's amazing. Of course, that's genius. Musk is a genius. I think he's incredible, for all of his things. Don't like the fact that he has so much money, but that's the system. There's nothing new, novel, innovative whatsoever about law firms. They've existed for hundreds of years, thousands of years, in some form or going back to Socrates, Plato. They've existed in multiple different forms. What they are clubs, and the next generation, the batons handed over to the next person down, the next person down, the next person down. They're clubs like the Garrett Club or any other major club where you have to be invited in. And once you're in, then you have to make your way to the top, because that's the way people naturally want to progress and want to get further and want to get further. Clubs, the law clubs are, in my view, clubs that have been created by men, for men, in a model for men, for a particular type of human that can go and deliver in those clubs. And when you take into account that over 50% of the new lawyers coming into those clubs are women, and then you spin your way all the way to the top of the top city clubs, and there are 12, 13, 18% max of women in the top city firms, then you can see how the journey of people being popped out of those clubs, thank you, you're no longer welcome, you're an asset, you've expired. We prefer Tom than Jane, thank you very much, good luck. Off you go. And so the people who've got to the top of those organizations haven't actually done anything other than survive. It's not their idea. It's not their power. It's not their innovation. It's not the thing that they've created. They've got there to the very, very top of these organizations by surviving the Game of Thrones.
And you've completely transformed the way that system works within Aria Grace.
Yeah, so Aria Grace is a very different system. So I was looking at all those systems and I was thinking, gosh, okay, what would you want to go and do if you were just to start completely afresh with a law firm model? And you see, when you look at the pyramidal structures, you think, well, there's got to be a boss, and then there's got to be people working for them, and you end up being in the partnership and all those sorts of things. And they're great in many ways because, these, I mean, I will not deride any of these major law firms or any firms that train juniors particularly. And the training I got in my firm was brilliant. I mean, they literally foie gras this experience and education into you. It's pummeled into you. And it's really, really, really good. And it's second to none. And I think those are great, great, great value for everyone getting that level of experience and training. The underlying principle of Aria Grace is wealth share. And it goes back to, we can earn more by creating more, sharing more, collaborating more, doing more together in every possible way. It's designed not to be pyramidal. It's designed to be open. In other words, you can be anywhere in that whole organizational spectrum and earn your way to whatever you need as a human being. And the only way we could do that was we don't pay salaries. So remember when I said your typical law firm, your lawyer gets a third of the fee. I decided that we could go and do something fundamentally different. We pay the lawyers 90% of the fee. So by paying the lawyers 90% of the fee, I knew I could attract amazing lawyers. Now, they happen to be, at the moment, they happen to be all city law firms, lawyers who've joined us in US firms, but that's not necessarily the model. I could attract these incredible lawyers to the firm to do incredible things by paying them 90% of the fee that was created. And because they get paid such a high percentage of the fee, they could afford to charge the clients less and still earn more than anyone else.
That's a crazy concept.
Right? So by doing those two things, you've now attracted these amazing, amazing lawyers, and they get these amazing, amazing clients who are getting fees way less than they would be charged anywhere else. The other thing with respect to the structure was we said there's going to be no expensive overheads. So no expensive buildings, no expensive, Mings and Titians and whatever else is, none of that sort of stuff. Because the only people who pay for that are the clients. So if you think about your 2/3, 1/3 model in your traditional law firms, clients are paying 2/3 of cost to get to the 1/3 of value.
That is so profound when you think about it that way, because I don't think anyone really recognizes that.
No, and it's just wasteful. And then when you start looking at where that happens in big business. So big banks are paying, your top flight, big city and top flight US law firms in the city at the moment are charging around about £1,500 to £2,000 an hour. An hour.
That is, it's a decent chunk to be paying for anything.
Right. So when you take a look at those sorts of fees and you think, who's buying that? And they're the banks and the VCs and the big, institutions, right? Ultimately, who's paying for that? If you whittle it all the way down the chain, it's people like you and me. Because it comes into the economies and it goes, fetters up, you pay your bank charges, you pay your whatever charges, they all get consumed up and they all go into, this big, big, big pot, which is then used to pay for people at the very top who then get paid back in big, big economies. That's where the money comes from. The money comes from us all. And the derived benefit is for the very, very, very few. It's not for the mass market. It's not available to you. It's going to be just for the few. So that's in a micro and a macro scale on law firms versus the wider economy is what happens. It happens in banks, it happens in accountancy practices, it happens in big consultancy practices, it happens everywhere. And then it's a continuum. And it gets worse and worse. It extrapolates because greed, people want more and more and more and more. Hence why you see food prices go up and logistic prices and petrol prices and everything goes up. It's all about, how do I get more for me? And then that has a tailback effect until then you have to put up your prices and someone else, so on and so on. That's the way inflation works. It's the people at the bottom of the market who are eventually catching up with the people at the top in terms of increasing prices, but they don't increase prices in the way that
The people
You
at the
increase the
top
price.
do.
Yeah, exactly. So then you can see the financial apartheid and how then rich get richer and poor get poorer. And then there are people who just stand still and the people who just fall by the wayside. That's why so many startup businesses collapse and fail, because they don't get the capitalization. So the wealth share model was about actually, by doing those two things, by paying your lawyers 90% of the fee, you can get these people to the number, whatever they want. So remember, my premise is time and health are the two things that matter. If you pay somebody 90% of the fee, they can get to their number. So whatever your number is, let's say your number is, I have to have £500,000 a year, right? And I need to pay for whatever I need to pay for. I need to pay for my parents and their nursing home. I need to pay for my kids and their schools. I need to pay for holidays. I need to pay for this. I need to pay for the, whatever it is. It's a big number. Let's say I need to make £500,000 a year. Actually, for the sake of maths, let's say it's 450. All I have to do is earn £500,000 in Aria Grace law, and then I've made my number 450 because I get 90% of the fee.
Wow.
Right. So the billing out of that is actually very, very low. Your typical bill rate for your solicitors and the like in the big city firms will be 1.5, 2 million, 3 million a year. That's what they'll be billing the firms. Right? They'll get paid a salary of 150, 200K, 300K. Yeah, some really good numbers, right? No one's going to scoff at 300K. But when you're billing out clients at, a multiple of that, you're billing them at, 1.5 million, 2 million pounds a year, and you're getting 300K, you're getting a tiny percentage, right? You're getting 25% or 20%, that sort of area.
So effectively, a client that's billing at 2 million in a big law firm could end up coming to Aria Grace Law and billing the same for the exact same work, being billed 500,000 and getting the exact same service and result.
If you were billing from a top city firm and you were billing $1.5 million to clients, and you bill those exact same clients in Aria Grace, you'd bill let's say £500,000, right? So the clients collectively have saved £1 million, right? So that's great. If you as a lawyer billing $1.5 million, you'd be paid 200K or whatever, as a law firm. In Aria Grace, billing £500,000, so a quarter of what you get paid £450,000. You've made £150,000 by a different structure.
As you can probably see from my expression, and for those of you that are watching this, I'm just a little bit mind blown. How does this allow you to actually run a business that is profitable? Because I know that your business isn't there for profit. Your business is there to donate.
We want to make as much profit as possible, but what we do with it is different.
Exactly this, because the purpose of your profit is to be donated to charity.
Yeah.
So how do you keep this structure going in a way where there is profit to then give to charity when so much is going to the people that are working there compared to what they would normally experience in a corporate firm?
So with a movement like Aria Grace Law CIC, you've got to start with one sucker, and that was me. Everybody loves our model except for my wife. Who's going, what? You're giving away everything? Crazy. But there is method in the madness. So when you start off, the first 5 years of any business is the hard graft, right? And so many businesses go out of, go bust in the first year and 2 years and whatnot. If you can make it to 5 years, you're set. You've got everything sorted out. Unless there's a global impact, a Lehman type thing, you're pretty okay. And so remember where I started from, which was I was in the position of, I had a platform, I had some money, I had some things I could go and put into it. And I created this thing by putting a little bit of money into it. And, I hired my first lawyer. When I say I hired, I brought the first lawyer on, but I had to pay her out of my own money to get this whole concept working. It started with me and 2 clients in 2018. One of which was pro bono, And we're mid-70 lawyers. We have 75 lawyers now and thousands of clients through the model. Might be 100 lawyers by the time we hit the end of the year. We've just hit 10 million revenue.
Congratulations.
This year, which is the first of the baby steps to where we need to go. But in order to go and do that, you've got to do several things. You've got to keep costs under control. You've got to keep them at a minimum. Modern technology is brilliant, so everything's SaaS, plug and play. You know, new lawyer, new Microsoft license. You don't have to go and get legacy systems. You don't have to go and... We were all working remote or on client side pre-COVID. Then COVID happened and improved the model. Because everyone said, you can't do that. It just doesn't make any sense. And then COVID came along and proved, actually, you can do that. You can do it pretty successfully. And then as we started building up those funds, we started to reinvest back into the firm. So at the start, I was the billing and invoicing guy. I was the IT guy. I was the marketing guy. I was the lawyer. I was doing whatever it was, the filings, everything you could name, I was doing. Then slowly but surely, then I got the marketing guy, the IT guy, the billing and invoice guy. It took me five days when we got to 10 lawyers to do billing and invoicing, because it's complex the way that we structured it. It's very complex. Money in, 90% out, and all those sorts of things, and lots of small deals, and aggregating up and making sure everything was done, paid, and put out on time, etc. And I'm a lawyer. It's not my sweet spot. It's not my skill. and other people do things much better. So surround yourself by people who are much better than you is a thing I've heard many times from many very successful people, and it's a truism. But after you're bootstrapping that whole thing along, and anyone who starts off a new business, new industry will know it. It's a truism. It's hard. I was up at 4:00 every morning. I'd be doing all of the things to run the business. My day job was being a lawyer. That brought in the money. Everything else was done for free. All the way up to today, I've never charged Aria Grace Law one single penny of my time. I'm a lawyer within the firm. I make my money that way. So when I'm charging clients, I get paid. Everything else is to create the model. It's to create what we're doing. It's the journey. So the next phase on that was persuading people to come on board and to join. That's a hard thing when you're setting up a brand new structure. The structure being you get 90% of the fee. They think, what? How is that possible? Well, we don't own expensive anythings. And just between you and me and your listeners, to run a law firm in this particular way costs around about where we are at the moment, 4% of revenue.
Oh, really? That is significantly lower than I would have expected.
So 6% at the moment goes out the door to the charity pots.
Wow.
And as that extrapolates, it just gets bigger and bigger because your cost base is squeezed down. Our revenues double every year. So next year will be 25 million plus. So they're extrapolations. On a straight line basis, we'll be a £500 million revenue by 2031. We'll be giving £45 million in that year to charities. That's good causes and people need them.
And this just goes back to your whole ideal of that wealth distribution, giving people that need the money access to the money, and the people that don't need the money, they don't need to be essentially hoarding that.
Pretty much. As a lawyer, getting 90% of the fee, you can, as I say, if you have a number that's I need to make £500,000 a year, right? You can do that probably in 3 or 4 months worth of work, or you can do that in 2 or 3 days worth of, 2 or 3 hours a day worth of work within the firm. Imagine that. You can earn £500,000 working 2 or 3 hours a day. That's really cool.
I'm going to go and get my law degree, and I'll be calling you in a couple of years' time.
It's a really, really, really cool, easy way. Then you got a choice. I want to take up knitting. I want to take up crochet, tennis, golf, look after my mum and dad, look after the kids, do whatever you want to do. Earn more money if that's what fills your boots. Cool, do it. But you get time, and that helps you get your health. Those are the two things that count. You get to whatever you need as quick as you can, and then you have a choice. You're no longer an asset. You're not there to be exploited or monetized by anybody. So
then for people listening to this who are in that stage where money is crucial, and you've said it yourself, money is important. There's nothing wrong with money, and
capitalism is good.
yeah, making money is not a bad thing.
Extreme capitalism, not good.
So for people who are in that position now where money isn't as free flowing, and therefore this idea of time and health seems so distant because money is taking over all thoughts and maybe even putting people into a state of survival. They might not call it that, but
Yeah.
for the purpose of this conversation, we call it that. What would you suggest as advice from someone who's worked in corporate, who's consulted, who's now got their own firm as well? What would you suggest to that person? And I appreciate this is a very broad topic. But
No, it's not. The answer's kind of obvious, I think. If you were to ask me if I was to do anything different in my life, I would say I wish I'd started this earlier. I started this at the age of 48, right? 55 now, and there's a hell of a journey ahead of us. From 10 million to half a billion is a big crazy journey, right? We'll do it. We've done incredible things. We've got amazing people now, and we've got the infrastructure, we've got the capability, we've got the wherewithal, we've got people hugely interested in what we're doing. We turned down 40 lawyers who wanted to join last month because they weren't quite right for us now. We turned down clients who aren't quite right for us, like tobacco companies. We don't want to touch them. We've got our values, we've got our integrity. But the thing I wrote in 2018 about our mission statement and what I wanted to go and do is the exact same today as it was then. It hasn't changed at all. And I wish I'd done that in 2008. In fact, I wish I'd done that in 1998, because then we'd be so much further down the track than we are today. I'd be at that. I'd be 5 billion now, and we'd be giving away, $1 billion a year to charities easily. Imagine, So I wish I'd done that earlier, but I didn't, and we are where we are. But to anyone who's got a passion for something, that guy Simon Scribner goes, "What's your dream?" Right? Anyone who's got a passion, do it. Don't think about being contained by what people tell you can and can't do. That's such a waste of it. Your biggest risk is not leaving your job. Your biggest risk is staying in your job.
that's going in the trailer, just so you know.
Your biggest risk is not taking a risk. It's not backing yourself or believing yourself. There's so many people say, I wish I'd done a restaurateur, or I wish I'd become a lawyer, or I wish I'd become something or other. Why didn't you do it? Oh, it costs money. No, you can find money to go and do, you get a loan, you can go and, there are a billion ways of becoming a lawyer. I know some of the best lawyers I know have come from the cruddiest of cruddy backgrounds, grew up in awful environments, and had everything against them you could possibly imagine, and are now top of the tree as these incredible, brilliant people who've had the most incredible, successful careers. And if you've got the skill to do whatever it is that you're passionate about, and I passionately believe that everyone has a skill that they can be passionate about and they want to do, whether it's a footballer, well, you might not make it into Chelsea because you've got a gazillion footballers who are brilliant, but you might be able to go and do some sort of coaching at junior level, and then you can find businesses that help you do that coaching, and then you suddenly work with food industries who want to bring in great food into that particular industry, and you can work together and you create a business easy. It's just finding the thing that you're passionate about and doing it. We've got a thing in Aria Grace law which we talk about is actions live forever. And whether you're good or bad, whether you're Rosa Parks or whether you're Martin Luther King or whether you're Adolf Hitler or whatever things have happened historically, good, bad or indifferent, that have been driven by people, they live on. They don't stop. And in order to create your future you've got to do it. And you may as well do it now than in 5 years' time or in 10 years' time.
because the time's going to pass anyway.
The only thing you say is, I wish I'd done this 10 years ago.
Which eliminates this idea of someone sitting there going, but I'm already, like, my age, I'm 37. So someone going, well, I'm 37, it's a bit too late now.
No, it's never too late. I started this at 48. It's like, I had, I divested myself of pretty much everything. God, if my wife listens to this, I'm dead. Anyway, if I spent too much money on it, I sold things to make it happen. I didn't take any. Well, I did. I took a bounce back loan when they came out in COVID time for the company. Those are things that are necessary, and you take out loans and you back yourself and you pay them all back. But you can do it. You got a choice: blue pill, red pill.
There is a certain level of certainty that you need to have about yourself to be able to back yourself, especially when it comes to taking on the risk of debt, right? So whether it's a loan or an investor or however you choose to find the money, where does your belief in yourself come from?
I think about things very hard. You don't make decisions on a whim. I've always been anti-bullying. I've always been anti-exploitation. I've always been, I've always been about fairness, and I've always backed myself because I think it's the right thing to do. I mean, we did this in the post office scandal where we acted for those 3 human beings, sub-postmasters. We did a pro bono. It cost us about £250,000 worth of fees. We were the firm that found the Clark advice. We were the firm that turned the Court of Appeal from just the disclosure exercise to the fact that it was an affront to justice. We did this, which then turned the ITV program into that. It turned the inquiry into a statutory inquiry. Were not for our 3 clients and for us doing what we did, they wouldn't have happened. And we had the most incredible pressure on us to not do what we did. As you can imagine, it just was unraveling the powers that be. And this was like, who are you guys? You're some small, cruddy little firm. You're not even criminal lawyers. What the hell are you doing getting involved in a case like this? And we just did it because it was the right thing to do. And if you really sit down, and we did not do that on a whim. It was really, really deeply thought through. But if you think about the things that are passionate to you, anyone has got a passionate, whether it's, I could set up a walking club and I could go and pull people together doing that. I could set up a nursery. I could set up a whatever. You can bring these things together. They're not hard to do. They are a lot of work, but they're not conceptually hard to do. That's not the issue. It's not the idea. It's actually just getting on and doing it.
Do you think people from your generation work harder than people in the younger generation?
I don't know. I suspect there's an awful lot of criticism about Gen Z or Z or whatever.
Whether you're British or American, depending.
Yeah, exactly. There's an awful lot of criticism about kids who are about entitlement. It's a different world. You see, we didn't have social media. We didn't have any of those sorts of things impacting on us. I remember the first fax, arriving in Dublin. It was like, oh my God, you put something in here, it pops out over there. It's like the devil's work. It's like, what's going on? I remember the advent of social media and all those sorts of things. I think social media is a dreadful thing for, pulling people away from their own reality. You have to look at these things and say, really don't get fooled by what's been presented to you, and really think for yourself and what's in here, what's passionate, what makes you want to go and do what you want to go and do. And then think about the risk of staying where you are and not being able to do what you want to do.
I feel like that in itself is such a powerful question for people listening to ask themselves, which is, you can continue on the path that you're on, but if there is something that you do want to do, what is the risk of you staying on the path that you're on? And effectively, the answer to that in most cases is you don't get to live out your dream. Or even if that's not the dream in the end, you will live the rest of your life wondering what if.
Yeah. Yeah. There was a great, do you remember there was a great meme,
I think.
Meme, thanks.
Yeah.
It was a great one of those things I saw a couple of years ago. We sort of consolidated my view on the current trend of capitalism, which was all about exploitation. There was this dude lying against a Lamborghini. I hope you've seen it. He's talking to this young kid, and he's going, "Hey, if you work really hard,
I've seen this
time next year, I could have another one of these." It's like, wow, that's it's sort of, don't sponsor other people. Work together, collaborate, share, look after people, but you don't need to sponsor other people by being an employee to them. You're the thing that you have is time. Don't give it away. It's very few. And all these 20-year-old kids in law firms who are, you might have seen the thing that I was talking about a couple of weeks ago on LinkedIn, where these lawyers are getting paid 170K a year.
I've written that down actually.
Yeah. And it's like, man, you're just wasting your life. And these kids who are being paid 170K a year, they're working over 3,000 hours a year to bill over £2,000, 2,000 hours a year, right? So they're getting 170K, working over 3,000 hours for their 170K. It equates to not very much, about 50 quid an hour or something.
And what you wrote down on your post, because I researched this, was a take home of £33 an hour. Most likely less, because your tax rate
You're paying
will be higher.
top whack tax, so your take home pay is £33 an hour. And you're thinking, you're going to sacrifice the best years of your life at the age of 20 and whatever else to go and do it. Now, it's, again, don't get me wrong, they're going to get exceptional experience, exceptional education, and you can create an argument to say they're investing in their future, but you need to know when to get off that particular merry-go-round.
How do you know when to get off?
How do you know when to unshackle the golden handcuffs? Is a really, really good question. I think
the salary handcuffs. Like when is the right time?
I think you can survive 3 or 4 years in that sort of environment. And I think you're going to get chipped as much as you're going to get chipped. Back to the Matrix moment, I know Kung Fu, whatever, right? It's been plugged into you, you've got it, it's there forever. It's a brilliant thing to do, to go and get a kite mark of, one of those top city law firms. That will be you forever. You're never going to say, oh yeah, then I worked for a lesser firm or a regional firm or this, that, and the other, whatever. I mean, there is a degree of snobbery and that people want to associate themselves with the best kite mark that they've ever got. So yeah, there's brilliance in that, but you need to know when to stop. For me, I was doing a corporate transaction in my firm, and then another one, and then another one. Literally rolled. The last one I did was 13 weeks end to end, weekends and all. And then we all went as a group on a sailing trip to say thank you very much for this amazing thing, which was really cool. And then we're just about to be rolled onto another one. And I realized I hadn't seen my friends, my family, no one else. And you're just living in this dark hole of, sort of corporate world. And you think that's just not right.
I'm smiling because my wife's looking at me from the side here as well. And I used to work heavily in sales in the personal development world. And I think once you're really deep into any industry, it doesn't matter which one you're working in, you end up living in this bubble because that's the only thing that matters.
Yep.
It's the only thing that's important. And you kind of live and breathe it and you become it 24/7.
Yeah.
And looking back on those years, you realize how many things you missed. We don't have kids yet. We're about to, but even nieces and nephews, even like when my mom and dad would say, hey, do you want to do this on a Saturday? And you kind of go like, you look back on that now and you go, well, I kind of wish I did have more of that time, because what was I doing? And I was facilitating a workshop or was in a sales event or something going on. And yes, it was great experience, but And this is why I asked you the question of like, when do you know when to get off? And it's this idea of you've got the knowledge, you've got the skills, you've got the experience that's taken you to a certain point. But once that, everything has to have a plateau. And until you then remove yourself from the level of comfort that you've now created for yourself, you won't have the opportunity for growth into anything else, because you are at that level of comfort for a reason, and there's why that result doesn't change anymore.
Right.
And I think that's probably the answer that I would come to myself, which is, if someone
But
asks
it's also
me,
the fear.
yeah. Oh, I mean, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
The fear is still there.
And this great job.
Yeah.
Whoa, the fear. And you're also being told that by the people higher up the pyramid.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, you could leave. Ooh, wouldn't do that.
Yeah, you'll earn way more with me than you would do by yourself.
Yeah.
Like there's
ooh, yeah.
so many things.
I want to do that. Ooh, yeah.
And I've had so many of those conversations.
Yeah.
So many. But it is terrifying to step out by yourself. But you realize it's probably not as scary as you originally thought, because you will find your feet in some way, and you'll find your talent, your skill, the experience that you had will help you along that journey.
I'm a lawyer in the exact same way as the other 75 lawyers within the firm are. And the other 74 will tell you to a person, thank you so much for creating this structure where we're all equal, where we all work together, where we all collaborate together, where we can work at whatever time we want to. Our clients don't care whether it's 4 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, or 10 o'clock at night. As long as you say you're going to get that share purchase agreement ready for them by Thursday at 2 p.m. and it's amazingly job done, brilliant, they don't care. In fact, they love it. The fact that these guys can go and earn in whatever way they want to earn, work in whatever way they want to work. They can come into our office. We've got a new office in Mayfair, which is brilliant. We managed, because we're a not-for-profit, we managed to negotiate the living daylights out of it and get a great rate. Thank you, Argyle. Incredible people. And we've generated this platform for growth. Clients love it. Everyone loves it. It's literally a win-win-win. The only question we often get from lawyers as they start to join us, it's too good to be true. Where's the catch?
Yeah.
Why would you do this? And the answer is very simple. Somebody has to. Somebody's got to start it. No one else in the world does. We are the only not-for-profit corporate law firm in the world. Think about that.
It's a mind-blowing moment,
just
actually.
Nuts, right? And yet here we are. We're already a mid-size rank. We're ranked on Chambers, which is the address book for the great law firms. We're first year ranking on there. We're as you say, we won Law Company of the Year at the Lawyer Awards, which is, as I describe it, the Oscars for nerdy lawyers. Whatever, no one else outside the industry cares, but for lawyers, that's an incredible thing, right? We have gone. We've in 6 short years, we've grown organically from 0, or actually minus, sorry, Mrs. Healey, minus, number to 10 million, and we're going all the way up, and we're going to keep going and keep going and keep going. Lawyers are queuing up to get into the organization. Why? Because there's impact, there's purpose, and we help people create something in the way that they want to work. And and our clients love it because they're getting great value for lawyers. They're getting a £2,000 an hour lawyer for 500 quid. Brilliant. Bring it on.
So never been a better discount.
Never been a better discount. They're getting top partners from Allen & Overy and from Bird & Bird and Baker McKenzie. They're all sitting within our firm. I had a great compliment the other day from a Freshfields corporate partner, big city, corporate law firm, who looked at our firm and he just said, my God, it's like a football fantasy league of lawyers there. This is just incredible. I thought that was the highest compliment you could get, right? From when you're judged by your peers and they're looking at it, they're going, that's cool. Let's keep doing that. And the fact that you're giving monies to the food banks and to groups like, we started equine law, so we're giving all of our funds there from that particular section and a bit more to spinal research. And they've nearly created a pathway through. We're giving our money, as I say, to food banks. We're giving it to that wonderful charity starting to give more and more to, called Noah's Ark for terminally ill children in North London. They're amazing. God damn it, what they do is incredible. Shout out to one of our other charities called Radical Recruit, Emma Frugwell, who's done the most incredible thing I think I've ever seen, starting up a charity from nothing that brings homeless people, former addicts, former inmates, and gets them into jobs around. I mean, incredible people. And we're helping the helpers. And that's, a gift, and they're helping us. And the more we work symbiotically together, they refer people to us. We do the corporate work for them, their employment work, we do whatever it is. and then we give all the profits back to their charities. So we've turned those charities into businesses, and you know they're now making more money because they give work to us and we give it back to them, and boom, 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 boom. You know, that's a symbiotic relationship. We tell the clients this is what we're doing. We plant a tree after every deal. We've got some very, very large car manufacturers now. We give quarterly ESG reports to say that, yeah, we've planted a gazillion trees here and we've given X amount of money to charity over there. They get these ESG reports, scope 3, which they then present back to their shareholders, their boards. And that's a huge value for them. They go, wow, amazing, thank you.
I mean, I've just never heard of anything like it. It is unbelievably profound in what you're doing and what you're achieving, and it's quite clear to see how much it's being well received because of your growth trajectory.
It's really interesting because probably the most important thing to tell anybody, particularly you know your son and your kids and your friends and people you love and whatever. Blue pill, red pill is a really, really strong thing. Stop believing what you're told. Examine and interrogate everything. No, you know why do you want to believe what the newspapers tell you when you know that they're owned by 3 people around the world? Why do you want to believe what corporations tell you because you're told the spiel that they want to tell you? Why would you believe HR as your friend? They're not. They're there for the company. They're not there for you. Why would you believe any of that sort of stuff? Why do you think people want you there? Because they like your smile? No, it's none of those things. It's all down to greed. Why is greed there? Because people don't really know what their own future is. Do I have enough time? Do I have enough money? Do I have enough money to make myself healthy? All those sorts of things. One of the things that we do, this will blow your socks off. One of the things that we do in Aria Grace when we've got people retiring, right? So the way that Keir Starmer's butchering your pension, so don't rely on that. And that's why working for yourself is great, because you're not going to fire yourself. You're just going to get better and better and better, and you'll bring more people on the journey with you who are going to be part of that. Don't employ them, bring them on as consultants and help them make money, and flatline the whole thing. Don't create a pyramid structure, and you'll find that it's just so much better. Then people are properly invested, because you're not saying, oh, I want some equity. There's no equity in Aria Grace Law. There's nothing. Aria Grace Law CIC is a community not-for-profit company limited by guarantee. There's no shares. No one can take dividends. There's no nothing. It's designed specifically for that. So it's like what you put in, you can take out. So the more you work, the more you can take out. The less you work, the less you take out. It's like, choice is yours, right? But when people retire from Aria Grace, if they want to, most lawyers don't. They want to keep the old Mathieu Grise going. When people retire from Aria Grace, they get, when you retire from a law firm, you get a watch or a bunch of flowers, a pat on the backside, and told, don't call us, we won't call you, and off you go, right? In Aria Grace, when they retire, you will get 10% of your former client's billings for the rest of your life.
I didn't think my socks could be blown off more than what we've had in this conversation so far. But I mean, if that's not the best kind of pension plan someone could have in place, because it's almost like a derivative of all the work and hours and effort that they've put in for the amount of time that they were doing it.
Because those clients are your clients. They're your assets in a way. They belong to you. You've brought them in. You've created them. You've worked them. You've nurtured them. You've put your time and effort. You've put the time that you would spend with your family into those people. You've invested in your future. They're yours. So when you leave Aria Grace Law, you get 10% of your former client's billing. The people who are doing the work will get 80%. The firm gets 10%, and the charity pots get 6-7% of that, right? So that pays for the overheads and stuff. But the lawyers who are not bringing in their own clients but getting your clients, they're getting 80% of the fee. You're getting 10% for the rest of your life. So if a guy's coming in a couple of months' time, he's hopefully bringing one of those big global platforms on board. He bills him about £1 million a year, right? A lot of work. He and his team, he's got a couple of people working with him. They build £1 million a year. They're going to come into us, and he's going to retire, I think, probably in 10 years' time, right? He retires, he'll get £100,000 every year for the rest of his life.
Wow.
If we grow that particular client to 2 million, you get £200,000 a year for the rest of his life.
I'm in the wrong industry.
Do you want to know something else?
Go on.
When he dies, he can leave that to his family and they'll get that forever.
That is, what's the word I'm looking for? That is a level of generosity that I don't think I've ever heard from any company.
It's not generous.
I was just about to ask you, how would you define it? Because I'm defining it as generosity because I've never known a company to do something like that, which is why it seems generous.
Yeah.
How would you define that?
Wealth share. See, what you want in the world is to incentivize entrepreneurs to release their inner fear from doing the things that they don't want to do, to allow them to do the things they do want to do. So if you think about all of the bad behaviors in corporates, I suspect a lot of it is to do with, I've got to shore up my future, right? Mm-hmm. I'm not going to let you up this pyramid because you might take my job and therefore I'm not going to earn enough. And then if I do live to be 80 or 90 or whatever, I won't be able to afford to do the things. I won't be able to afford to look after my parents in nursing homes. I won't be able to give my kids the best education I can afford or whatever it happens to be. So people get very consumed by fear and greed and so forth, and those drive all of the wrong behaviors. But what happens when you unshackle all of that, unlock those golden handcuffs to the floor so you can realize, actually, they are handcuffs. They might look golden, but they are handcuffs, right? Now I'm free to go and do what I want to do and how I want to go and do it. You could set up any industry following the Aria Grace model. You could set up a plumbing industry, for want of a better example. I only say this because one of the guys I met over the weekend was this brilliant plumber and wants to go and do something radically different with the market. Anyway, you could set up a plumbing industry where you go and have a bit of capital, you go and buy a whole bunch of plumbing kit, you go and train all these brilliant plumbers. It's going to cost you, whatever, 100K to go and do, let's just say, right? And then if you set up the model like we've set up, that 100K you can get paid back at cost, 100, not, or if you've consumed interest on it, whatever it's cost you, you can get that money back, right? Now you're a plumber in one of the world's best plumbing industries because you're getting 90% of the plumbing fees, I'm getting 90% of the plumbing fees, your wife's getting 90% of the plumbing fees of the work that you've done. You've just gone out and done, fitted a boiler, that's £3,000. Okay, great. What's the cost of the boiler? 2,000, right? You get 900 quid. Being the balance of that, 100 quid goes into the pot, which pays off for the overheads and other things like that, and anything excess of that we give to charity. Easy.
And then that client is someone who, if you decide to stop working, someone else will then go and take over that client for you, and they'll get 80% and you would get your 10%.
Yeah, my client is Centrica, and I've just done all their plumbing work, and they've come to me for everything. Right now, I've had a bad accident. Right, I've damaged myself, right, or done something. I've got a dodgy hip, whatever. I've got so and so to go and take over my work. He's now getting 80%. I get 10%. Forever.
We are talking about such a radical difference in the way industries function. I hope that people listening to this, because my mind's whirring in ways that I can do things differently as well. So I hope people listening to this are starting to recognize that if they do want to experience a different outcome within their business and within their life, then it starts by recognizing that you actually have that power in you to maybe be the first person in your industry, like you were in yours, to take those steps away from what is considered the norm.
Yeah. I speak to people all the time. Anyone wants to call me up about how to apply that into their sector, industry, whatever, I'll tell you how. It's no magic, It's very simple. It's a simple process. You set it up right. The problem with structure, the traditional structure, will never change for the reason I've spoken about. You can't change a law firm that's based on a traditional model because all the lawyers will leave and go somewhere else and your model will collapse in a heap. The only way you can change structure is by creating a new one. You have to create a new structure and start it from scratch and build it forward. Because you can't change existing structures. There's too much legacy in place, there's too much cost, there's too much whatever's there, mindsets, there's not the right platform for development and growth. Stop, switch off the old stuff, start the new structure. In 5 years' time, you're going to go, hell's bells. In 10 years' time, at some point or other, well, I'm going to stop charging clients because as Aria Grace Law CIC gets bigger and bigger and bigger, I'm going to stop doing my own client work because I have to, because it's just too big. I'll do lots of evangelizing as I always do and always have done. But instead, I'll charge the firm as my client. So it'll be an hourly fee to the firm. Whenever I'm doing work for the firm, I just charge the firm. That'll come out of that 10%. Off we go. Then we just create more and more and more. So we bought a place, for example, or in my place, we're renting a place in Mayfair. And the idea being is lots of the funds lawyers who come into Aria Grace have then ready tap access to all these fund clients in Mayfair. And you could look at this in one or two ways and go, oh, that's a little bit excessive. Actually, it's not. We've reinvested for monumental growth. So we now get a whole host of funds lawyers who come into the firm. They take on their clients. The first client pays for the office. The next 15 clients go to charity.
Wow.
Tick. Then you grow again, and you grow again, and you grow again. So you just got to keep your eyes on your costs. Don't ever overstretch yourself. Look at what your throughput of revenue is. Work out those things. It's a little balancing act. My COO in the firm had to take me to task because last year I emptied out all of the coffers, literally to the penny, to all the charities, food banks and Age UK and others in particular. And we weren't quite prepared for the full impact of the revitalised insurance that came through in the year. So I had to go and dip into my pocket again to pay for that. It's the last time I'll make that mistake.
Yeah.
There's a balance and you've got to keep your eyes on the numbers. Once you understand your numbers, you will absolutely be fine. Never overstretch.
Lindsay Healey, this has been one hell of a conversation. My final 4 questions
All right,
I'll ask
let's go.
everyone that has been on the show.
42. I forgot the question.
First one. What is the most essential skill that you believe someone needs to be able to succeed in today's world?
Listening.
No one's ever said listening before. I love that. What is the most impactful book or movie that you've read or watched that's had a profound impact on your mindset?
Jungle Book.
Really?
Yeah.
Why?
It's got everything. It's got murder, love, conspiracy. It's got corruption. It's got Shere Khan. It's got hope. Bagheera. Bagheera is great full of hope. Blue Bear. It's got the bumbling along stuff. You got the innocence of a child in Mowgli. You've got everything in there. It's got don't confuse it for a child's book. It's a life play.
I'm gonna have to watch the Jungle Book again, especially since
The original.
Yeah, of course. Especially since when people have been referring to our little one that's about to get here, because we've got a name but we've not been sharing it out to anyone. I've been calling him Mowgli.
Mowgli's great.
So which I've been trying to gun for, but I keep getting solid no's.
If you look at your experience in corporate and you think of trust in me, in me, trust in me, as the coil comes around, Carl's coil comes around and squeeze the living daylights out of you. It tells you everything you need to know. It's profound.
I'm watching the Jungle Book again. What is a lesson that you have learnt the hard way?
Don't start too late. Do it now. Do it. Nike got it right. Just do it. Post it. Do it. Think about it. Shout about it. Do it. Don't wait. Don't put off saying to people how you love them. Don't put off getting in contact with somebody. Don't put off putting your arms around someone who needs help. Don't put off asking for help. Don't put off your thing that's going to light your fire, your passion, your future. Do it.
That is a incredible sentiment, and I love that. Final question for you.
This is a tough one, I can tell.
Yeah. What's the one positive message that you would love to share with the world and everyone listening to this today?
By reimagining what you know, and with the support of friends, family, your husband or wife, if you have lucky to have a husband or wife, you can go with very little to create something huge when you realize the power of humility, compromise, and sheer dogged determinedness.
Lindsay Healey, thank you so much for joining me on the show.
It's been a pleasure. It's been an absolute pleasure.